Hey everyone, I'm Kevin Irving and I'm coming to you live from the Pearl District, and you're here for the Artslandia happy hour standing by. I'm the artistic director of Oregon Ballet Theater, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to this little event, this little happy hour. We're going to be looking at some fabulous dance clips. I will be taking your questions, looking for your comments, all of that stuff. And I hope it's going to be lots of fun. I have what I call a modified Manhattan, and it's a modified perfect Manhattan, actually. I drink bourbon, and so it's not quite perfect. Like many things in life, it's almost perfect. I'd like to have enough dry vermouth that it's not too sweet, but not too much that it tastes like medicine. So cheers to all of you. I hope you all are well. Isn't it, wait. Yeah, that's good. It's crazy that we are 10 weeks into this lockdown. I can barely remember what life was like before March 12th, when everything came to a complete and sudden stop. But that's part of the reason that we're here today, because we're going to help you all remember the wonderful, fabulous experience of going into a theater and seeing live performance art brought to you by your favorite ballet company, Oregon Ballet Theater. So I want to say again, please do send questions and comments, and make sure that you are watching the clips. I will be watching. I might comment occasionally. And I want to say again, thank you to our friends at Artslandia for making this all possible. And I'm not seeing anything, so I'm wondering if I've done that all for naught. I'm hoping that somebody on the Artslandia team is going to tell me yes. Watching the iconic Serenade by George Balanchine. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it when the clips are over. Okay, so that caught me a little bit by surprise, and that's just a little bit of stage management issues back here. because I wanted to say before we showed it that we wanted to start with something that was really iconic in terms of ballet. And this by George Balanchine, who's considered by most, if not all, who are knowledgeable about ballet to be the single most important choreographer ever. And this was the very first ballet he choreographed when he came to America in the early 30s. And it really evokes the poetry of the Romantic era, but it's fused with the dynamic qualities of a new world and the new dancers he met when he got to the US. And it's also really significant for Oregon Ballet Theater because, well, it was on the very first all Balanchine program that was, I believe, 1999. And that was programmed by the founding artistic director, James Canfield. And well, it's just so important when you look at the piece, and those were two short clips, very jammed up against each other. The ballet was kind of created in part to teach dancers how to dance. And it, as much as it evokes this romantic era with this, you know, moonlight feeling and those long, soft tulle dresses that they wear, it's very academic in a lot of ways. So it really has, if you remember the very beginning of the piece, there are all these women standing and they do a gesture with their arm, and then they do the very first move in ballet, which is to turn out your feet. And that action of turning out is kind of like turning on the performance. And small little tidbit of fact, it was one of the first ballets I ever danced to. At the very, very end, there are 4 men who come on and do really thankless work, partnering too many women to mention, and they really don't do any dancing to speak of. And they have to be coordinated with everyone. And it was a really wonderful introduction for me when I got into a ballet company to learn that dance. I'm looking for, and this is to my friends at Artslandia, I'm looking for the chat to see whether there are any questions, and I'm not finding it. So if anyone on this feed wants to share a, I think I'm looking for a link that will share questions. Okay, got a little message here. Okay. Getting the lowdown is just dandy. Okay, I have clicked on the image of me, but it's coming up with a static image. So I'm going to go back, and somebody will keep feeding me, hopefully, comments and questions. But I have to say, Serenade is really just a gorgeous ballet. And part of the reason is that amazing music by Tchaikovsky. And of course, George Balanchine was Russian. He was actually, oh my goodness, not Ukrainian. Somebody's gonna blow my head off. Where is he from? Georgia. He's Georgian, from Georgia, the country, not the state. And anyway, that Russian sensibility is deeply embedded in all that dance. And it's a really, I think, potent perfume. And I just love it. I just love it. And I think the dancers who dance that ballet also really love it. So we're going to go to a different kind of tradition now. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this one before we get to it. We're going to see a short clip from the full-length Napoli by August Bournonville. And this is a ballet choreographed in the 1840s. So a long time ago. And in Denmark, the tradition of the Danish ballet was really solely the effect of this one man on the entire Danish culture. Bournonville was a contemporary of Hans Christian Andersen. They were actually friends, and they had a lot of discussions. And the sensibility of Hans Christian Andersen is really very present in the work that August Bournonville did. Napoli is the most well-known piece that he's done, especially the third act. OBT was actually the very first and still the only American company to build and produce the full-length Napoli. And that is a huge accomplishment that we should all be really proud of. It was one of the top priorities for me when I got here in 2013 to build a bridge to doing Napoli, and the bridge metaphor is apt in this one. What I love about the Danish ballet tradition is, first of all, typically it's not about fairy tale characters, princesses and princes, and sorcerers. It is about real people in situations that you can identify with a little bit. The actual dancing, which is technically super hard, super duper hard. There's this gesture, I'm gonna stand up to show you. There's a gesture that almost every main variation ends with, where they go like this. And it's just this simple offering of the hands, of speaking to the heart, offering it to the audience with a really natural quality that I find to be just so joyful. As I said, it was a huge project for OBT. And at Artslandia, if you could go on that still image for a moment. I want to show you guys, this is where we're going to start. And I just want you to look, before we start this clip, look at all the people on stage. There are a number of dancers from the OBT company. There are at least 14 dancers from the OBT2 junior company there. There are, do you see all the children on the bridge? This bridge in Napoli has literally been the starting point for so many stars of Danish ballet that they grow up in the school, and every year, because Napoli has never gone out of repertory in Denmark since 1842. So many, many famous dancers, including people like Erik Brun, at one point stood on that bridge and looked over and was hoping for the day that they would be on stage dancing those really hard steps. But also amongst the crowd, there are all these extras, these characters that really give life to the scene. And this is so important to Frank Anderson, who was our guide and our god for this project. Frank Anderson, a former artistic director of both the Royal Danish Ballet and the Royal Swedish Ballet. I met him when I was directing the Gothenburg Ballet in Sweden, and we formed a pretty close connection because Gothenburg and Copenhagen are not that far apart. And he came in and he knew what every single person, and there's, I want to say 65 or 70 people on stage, and he was always talking about how they should be natural, they should be in the moment, and they should actually really enjoy what they're doing. Now, we're going to see just a section of Napoli that is towards the end of the ballet. There's been some conflict. There has been a loss at sea and a magical transformation. Two magical transformations, actually, some deception, some heartache, and then a wedding. In a time-honored tradition, the two central characters tie the knot and everyone's super happy and they dance. So we're going to see a little bit of the pas de six from Napoli. And this first variation you're going to see is OBT soloist Eva Burton. Take it away, Artslandia. that gesture. I'm on now. My husband's here trying to help me figure out the technology. Obviously not my forte. So there are a couple questions came up that I'm going to answer. One question I think is for me says, do you still dance? I dance in my heart. I dance sometimes in the studio in the sense of I teach, but I haven't performed since it's been like 20 years, a long, long time. There's been a couple of mentions of the costumes, and that was kind of why I wanted to point out all those people on stage. You know, all the work that was done for Napoli was done right here in Portland by artisans who live and work in this community. And our costume shop pulled out all the stops to make that production as beautiful as it was. And our scene department as well created all new sets. And it really was just such an incredible, an incredibly proud moment in my life, actually, to see that brought to life here in Portland. And let me see. I am excited to talk about this. So somebody said, you're happy that I'm excited. I'm really thrilled. I miss all of you, and I miss seeing the company dance more than anything, more than words can express. I really miss seeing the beautiful dancers of OBT dancing. Let me see. So it's a great question. How long do dancers rehearse for a production like this? And for this production, if I recall correctly, we had a couple of intense learning periods of about 3 to 4 weeks before we began to really work on the entire production. And then when we began to put the entirety of it together, and it's a 3-act ballet, if memory serves, we had about 6 weeks to get that all from soup to nuts. So it was pretty incredible. Ashley Coates asked, how does a dancer become a soloist? And I wish I could have Eva Burton pop in to answer that question. I'm going to try to take on Eva's persona for a moment. You work really, really hard. You come in every day, and every day you try to get a little bit better. And the fact is that for dancers, a lot in their lives is out of their control. They don't choose which parts they get to dance. They don't get to choose which dancers they are partnered with. They really have to entrust themselves to the directors that they work for and the team that supports them and do their best. So I've always said that one of the best things that can happen to a dancer is to land somewhere where their talents are needed and appreciated and where their potential is nurtured. And so I think that the dancers that I know who have become soloists have found those opportunities to be in the right place at the right time and exploited the heck out of them. They've made sure that if they have an opportunity to dance something special, they invest greatly in that opportunity. I hope that answers your question. Follow-up. How does a soloist become a principal dancer? More of the same. There is this, hierarchy is a weird thing. And I want you to recall that before 2002, OBT wasn't even a ranked company. All dancers were listed equally. And yet there were those superstars. I mean, Patricia Miller, who am I forgetting? They're all named Tracy Taylor. Those people, they exhibit some kind of je ne sais quoi, that magical quality, and they become a vehicle for the audience to connect with in order to go more deeply into the performance. Thomas Baker said, hi, Nicola. I'm sure he saw you leaning over my shoulder eating pretzels. What to tell one's gifted 5-year-old granddaughter? I love that question, and that's from Kathleen Finnegan. For a long time, if you're lucky, dance will be something you do because it brings you immense pleasure. And if it becomes something that you want to do as a vocation, you have to invest in it like anything else. Think of a violinist or a pianist. They spend hours throughout their childhood practicing, and practice makes perfect. And it's just an important line to be careful of with young people, to make sure that this is something that they really still love to do, and they're not just doing it because. And also keep in mind, there are many people, myself included, who started dance way late and still found a way to make a living and have a really fulfilling career. I want to look at one more question. I'm seeing lots of hearts. What are your favorite ballet films or films with ballet is a really good question, because I want to say that one that's not on the list is Black Swan. And that's a great lead in to our next clip. So I'm going to go to the next clip after I have a sip. So our next clip is going to be from Swan Lake that we performed in 2017. And this was a production that I had the principal responsibility for. I'm not a choreographer, although I contributed some small dances and scenes. What I did was create the framework for the dancing. Many people don't realize that Swan Lake exists in a hybrid form, in as much as there are just a couple of sections of Swan Lake that are at all similar to the original choreography from the 1880-something first production. Famous Russian choreographers, Lev Ivanov and Marius Petipa, the kind of institution of Russian ballet, contributed some dances, and those dances are there, but almost everything else in every production you will ever see of Swan Lake is invented whole cloth in order to fit whatever narrative the leader wants to present. And for me, Swan Lake has always been something of a problematic ballet. because it's the lead character, Odette Odile, has no agency. She's only acted upon. She has no power until ultimately the only power that she has is to commit suicide, which is the tragic ending. And I feel really uncomfortable in 2017, 2020, to be hyping this beautiful ballet with a message that speaks to a historical perspective that we don't share anymore. I really felt uncomfortable about that. And at the same time, there's so much beauty in Swan Lake, both in the choreography that has been preserved in those sections, the White Act, which is the second act of the ballet, and some of the other dances are just incredibly beautiful. And the music of Swan Lake is some of the best music ever written. And so I wanted to give myself a challenge with this ballet. And as often happens when you challenge yourself, you don't necessarily hit it out of the park the first time around. I wanted to challenge myself to find a way to keep what was beautiful about the tradition, and also somehow find a way for the story to reflect something more positive and more in line with how we see the world today. At the same time, I'm also really keen on making sure that ballet is also entertaining, and it's not some medicine you take. Carrie, you're gonna go to the ballet, kid, get some culture. In order for the experience to be enjoyable, I think it has to have some dimension. So I was looking to maybe do the impossible, but I was hoping to find a way to messages of encouragement from my colleague, find a way to make it entertaining, to have a narrative that was leading towards a positive outcome. And to be honest, I wanted to also include a little bit of a critique on the traditional received view on women as pawns, specifically to be married, because the whole premise of Swan Lake revolves around the fact that the prince has to choose a bride. He has to choose a bride, which means that there are women and young girls who fight for that position. And I wanted to find a way, this is terrible, I wanted to find a way to actually make a critique of that, make it funny, and make sure that there was just maybe a hint of being uncomfortable as you find it funny, because this is something that has been really so integrated into the idea of classical ballet. And so it was thumbing my nose a little bit at that. And guess what? People didn't like that. At least some people didn't like it. Some people thought that I was disrespectful of tradition, and that it was inappropriate to introduce comedy into what is typically a tragic ballet. But I want to show you one of my very favorite sections of this. This is typically the third act, the ballroom scene, which is when all of the eligible ladies, or not eligible, or not so eligible ladies, are vying for the hand of the prince. The prince, who we know is somewhat of a young at heart young man who's not ready to take on this responsibility of getting married and leading. He's not really that interested, and he's also just had a completely magical experience with an illusion of a beautiful swan princess, and has kind of fallen head over heels in love with the swan princess. So we're picking up the action after we've seen a whole bunch of women and girls, because I included a very young girl who is kind of being offered to the prince by her very aged grandfather, in just the most terrible, blatant ploy. But we're going to see the Spanish variation, also one of my favorite numbers musically from the piece. And this is choreographed by OBT's resident choreographer and my husband, Niccolo Fanti, and it features Emily Parker and Makino Hayashi in Spanish from the Swan Lake. So please take a look. Artslandia, let it roll. Oh, I hope you like that. And I want to point out the work of OBT's resident lighting designer, Michael Mazzola, in that clip, because he just made the stage look so gorgeous. And I think you can see what I mean. We kind of really played up the rivalry and the ridiculousness of the situation that is kind of the fulcrum of the whole ballet. I'm going to go to some questions here. I have a question of what production have you been most proud to work on here in Portland? It's really hard to choose. It's really, really hard to choose. One of them has to be Napoli, simply because it was a landmark production and the first new full-length production that OBT has produced since, I don't know, the 90s. It's been a long, long time. So that was really big. We've had a number of really stunning things. I have to say I can't choose. I really can't. So I'm going to leave it at that. Emily Dew wants to know how to enhance her study or enhance her enjoyment of ballet. And there's an excellent resource for you. If you attend OBT performances, the performance perspectives that take place, I think an hour before curtain, is so wonderful. Linda Besant has been doing that for years, an OBT historian and archivist. And Brooke Manning has also been doing them. And they just give so much information, behind the scenes background about the creators and about the music and about the artists. So, and you can look at the obt.org site for some of those things, and that might help you. Thank you. congratulations to me. I'm trying to update uh, Swan Lake. I should show you some of the hate mail I got for that. Well, actually, you can read it in the paper because they were published. Anyway, Frederick Coleman asked, who did your interior? It's gorgeous. You know, thank you for that comment because I think it's gorgeous too. I could give a shameless plug for my friends, Matthew Boyce, former OVT dancer, and Frederick Coleman of Chia Lo Home for that. And we're going to go to the next clip, I think. We're going to go to a kind of different mode. And so let me give you a little bit of background on me quickly. Thumbnail sketch. I started ballet. I started ballet when I was 17, but I started ballet like once a week. And then when I graduated high school, I got a scholarship to study at the Alvin Ailey American Dance Center. I was a jazz dancer primarily. And Alvin was at the audition. It was something like 300 people there. And I got a scholarship, and Alvin always looked out for me. And being part of the Alvin Ailey organization is one of the luckiest things that ever happened to me in my entire life. And it was right after graduation. I had hoped to go to college for dance, and I had scoped out a couple of programs and come into contact with some big name ballet stars. I won't give their names away, but I kind of found time to go up to some ballet dancers and say, here's my situation. I just started. Could I ever have a career? Can I become a ballet dancer? And I was told flatly, no. No way, no how, pretty much. So going to the Ailey School was a big turning point for me because ballet was really important to Alvin and to the organization. And so I studied it a lot more alongside other modern techniques and jazz. And then I got my first real professional job with a very small modern company. And that small modern company, there were 5 people in it. We didn't wear shoes. We danced and everything. It was the kind of company that was described at the time, this is the early 1980s, as postmodern trance dance. Basically, you just danced until you were ready to heave and go out and do it again. I got into a ballet company at age 24. At age 24, I think was like maybe the first time I ever owned a pair of ballet slippers that were really my own. And I was in a ballet company. And so all that to say, I'm not a purist. And when I got to ballet, I fell in love, and I had many wonderful instances of people showing how I could fit in and how I could do something, and who helped me get there. And that has really stuck with me. And that really set me on the path that I've been on till this day. So when I look at ballet as a director of Oregon Ballet Theater, and I look at programming in particular, I try to find a way to honor tradition and to make tradition new, as you saw maybe with Napoli and with Swan Lake, and also invest in the new kinds of expression in classical ballet. Because make no mistake, classical ballet isn't going away, and our traditions are morphing and they are adapting to the world around us. And that is because there are super talented people who are investing in it. And what a ballet dancer does, no other dancer can do. I'm just going to go out and say it. I love all forms of dance, and I don't place a hierarchy, but the demands of classical ballet on the dancer are extreme, and they're really specific. And we're going to see some of that. We're going to see a clip from a work that literally changed the face of ballet from one day to the next. It was choreographed in 1987, but in my opinion, it really signaled the start of the 21st century in ballet. It's a clip from In the Middle, Somewhat Elevated by, what's his name again? Bill Forsyth. Bill Forsyth, who was a dancer, American dancer with the Joffrey Ballet before going to Stuttgart Ballet in Germany, founded the Frankfurt Ballet. But this is something he choreographed on the Paris Opera Ballet at the invitation of Rudolf Nureyev. And part of my job as a director is to challenge the dancers and also challenge the audience to experience the new and to go further than they thought they could go. And this ballet, In the Middle, Somewhat Elevated, is all about challenge and bravery and the healthy competition that is a fact of life in ballet. It's also really based on the classical form of theme and variation. The theme is set out right at the beginning of the ballet, and the rest of the ballet is just a wonderful series of variations on those themes. This is with music, I'll say music, by Tom Willems. I'm sure many people will think it's not really music, but it's interesting because the partnership of Bill Forsyth and Tom Willems is very similar to the partnership between George Balanchine and Igor Stravinsky earlier in the 20th century. So we're going to see a section of In the Middle, Somewhat Elevated. It's again with Eva Burton and with Peter Franz and others who are also in it. So let's take a look at In the Middle, Somewhat Elevated. Watch this part. The principal dancers in this part are literally going over and telling people, get off the stage. And now watch here. He said no. Makino said, no, I'm not going. Sorry, we're not going to see Makino do that little solo that comes, not little, it's actually a super hard solo. So I'm going to go to look at some of the questions in a second, but I just want to draw the connection to Balanchine here. Now, we saw the clip of Serenade at the beginning, which is one side of Balanchine, but one thing that Balanchine is really known for is stripping away the idea of costumes and scenery for dance and really focusing on the dancer. So a lot of his ballets take place on a completely bare stage, and the dancers are in just practice clothes, kind of elevated practice clothes. So that aesthetic is what Bill Forsyth began with. I should say William Forsyth. We're not like that. Kind of known as Bill most of the time. So he took that aesthetic of the just practice and he turned it up again. And it was really so much in response to the world we live in now. And I just love that dance. And I know that it was an incredible experience for the dancers of OBT to work on it and to learn it from someone who was very close to Mr. Forsyth and worked with him for many years. The lovely and talented, oh my God. And yes, Notanius. Okay, we're going to take some questions over here. Every ballet should have a narrator. I think that would be a good job for me, actually. And did you see, I don't know if you could hear my voice over the clip. There was a section when the two dancers are, doing their pas de deux, and they don't like that there's a whole bunch of other people on stage. So they literally go over to them one by one and say, you got to go. And also at the very beginning of the clip, principal dancer Xuan Chang, who has just finished an outrageously hard solo, is kind of finishing her solo as these two come barreling on. And she kind of does this little kind of like, huh, take it. I love that moment too. Let's see. Oh, there was a good question here. How are the dancers staying in shape with everything canceled? How are they handling this unexpected break? And I can only think that it's extremely hard. Aside from the actually being in shape part of doing ballet, there is the whole communal aspect of it. There is really no me alone in ballet. I mean, it's very rare. Even principal dancers who dance solos all the time have the support and the contact with all the people that are part of the company. As you saw that clip of Napoli, when we stayed on that static image, you saw all the people around. All of those people are so closely bound together. And during all of this time of lockdown, that absence has to be really keenly felt. I know the dancers are taking class either daily or more. Many of them have gotten pieces of the dance floor we laid down. I don't know if you noticed, but we don't dance on just a wood floor. There's this surface, kind of like a carpet that's laid out called marley. It's a kind of linoleum type material, and many dancers have small pieces of that in their home to facilitate their work. But you rob a dancer of space, you rob them of a piece of their soul. So I really feel for all the dancers all over the world right now who are suffering in isolation and not able to really practice their art. And we should all give some thought to how they are managing it and send them lots and lots of positive energy, because that's what they need. See if there's a question here. Okay, I don't see another question. So I'm going to go to, speaking of trying to look for positive outcomes. We're going to show a clip from another big favorite of mine, a project that almost made me jump off my balcony at one point, but really proved to be beyond my imagination of how touching it could be. One of the truly um, spine-tingling experiences I've ever had in the theater. It's Rhapsody in Blue, which was choreographed by Niccolo Fanti, our resident choreographer, in collaboration with Thomas Lauderdale and Hunter Nowak. Many of you, I'm sure, know who Thomas Lauderdale is, the famous leader of Pink Martini, a local Portland-based small orchestra. Thomas and his partner, Hunter, have a deep connection with Rhapsody in Blue, and it was Thomas's wish that Niccolo choreographed Rhapsody in Blue when we were talking about this collaboration. And he also had some really specific demands about it. He wanted to see that the ballet had a narrative, that it wasn't just a dance for dance sake. Okay, good. And he and Hunter had this idea that it really should be about something called l'heure bleue, which is apparently a well-known phenomenon in France, hence the French, wherein a woman washing her dishes, for some reason she's always washing her dishes, when she realizes that her husband is having an affair and is unfaithful to her. And for the longest time, Niccolo and I just could not imagine how that could become a ballet in any way, shape, or form. But Thomas and Hunter, to their credit, really held true to that vision. And at a certain point, Niccolo found his way in to the work. And it's really built on relationships that Niccolo has formed with the leading dancers of the work. And the work stars Xuan Chang, our principal dancer, as the betrayed woman, Peter Franz as her unfaithful husband, and former OBT principal dancer of many years, Chauncey Parsons, as a love interest, and principal dancer Brian Simcoe as another love interest. So 3 principal men, 1 principal woman. And I don't want to give too much away, but the whole work kind of centers on the ability of the human being to admit mistakes and to ask forgiveness, and for the human being to offer forgiveness and to find a way forward out of adversity through compassion and love. And this is Rhapsody in Blue. So, you know, people's connotations of Rhapsody in Blue typically are, you know, something very energetic, show busy. And the thing is that Thomas and Hunter really wanted to invest the ballet with more space and more poetry. And so with the permission of the Gershwin estate, I should say, they created that space and they gave more breath to what we know of Rhapsody in Blue. This is the 2-piano version. It's played live at every performance by Thomas and Hunter. And we're going to see this moment where the 3 principal men, you know, who have kind of established their rivalry, their differences, their animosity, and through the agency of one Brian Simcoe, they decide that strife is not worth it and conflict is not worth it, and they just give themselves over to the pure pleasure of dancing. So we're going to watch a short clip from Rhapsody in Blue, choreographed by Niccolo Fanti with Thomas Lauderdale and Hunter Nowak, Xuan Chang, Peter Franz, Brian Simcoe, and Chauncey Parsons. Take it away. Unfortunately, that's all we'll see of Xuan up there in her window. Maybe she's washing dishes right now. Oh, I hope you like that clip. I see a couple of comments here. Deb Beard, who mentioned that the OBT men are so fabulous. I could not agree more. You know, I love them all. I think they're all really talented, but we have an amazing company of men, and everybody says so. I'm looking at other comments here. L'heure bleue, Nicolo translated it for everyone, the blue hour, apropos of Rhapsody in Blue. Great, well, I'm gonna go to our very last clip to end us. It's, you know, we're already at the hour mark. And this is a work by Helen Pickett that we have done twice before, the last time in 2017. And it's called Petal. It's a colorful work. It's joyful, energetic, boisterous. And I wanted to show this last just so we all go out on a high note, thinking about happy times and moving our body to the music. If anyone has a final question before we go, I'll be happy to answer, but it looks like there isn't one. So we're going to take a look at the OBT company in the 2017 version of Petal by Helen Pickett. Take it away, Artslandia. I should mention that you saw in that clip Ansa Deguchi, Emily Parker, Xuan Chang, and Candice Bouchard with Peter Franz, Thomas Baker, Avery Reiners, and Michael Linsmeyer. I think that's it for our Artslandia happy hour. I've gone a little over, but I had a great time. It was so fun watching these clips with all of you. I so appreciate your interest. I hope that you will consider supporting OBT during this time. As I said, you could go to obt.org. You are also welcome to visit Artslandia for more of these. I have to tell you who tomorrow's happy hour with is. Oh my goodness, where is this? I'm so sorry, I cannot find the name, but I'm going to toast. I think, you know, I was asked, oh, Susanna Mars, thank you. I forgot there's a chat box. Susanna Mars tomorrow, that's going to be awesome. I have just a little bit left. I'm going to get a refill from the barrel that Jamie Hampton and Ashley Rowland gave to me along with this. This says Irving Private Reserve on it. They know that I like my Manhattans. Thanks to Jamie and Ashley. I did not include Big Shoes in this roundup. That will be for the next one, I promise. But my toast was to all the extroverts out there who are really jonesing for more audiences in which, to which they can be exuberant. And introverts are doing fine, but the extroverts among us are really hurting right now. So stay safe, be well, wash your hands, please support OBT, and we hope to see you at the theater really soon. Thanks very much, everyone.